Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
وعليكم السلام.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa salam wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we'd like to welcome you all to week 3 of the book that we're covering, Safinatun Naja, which is translated as the ship of salvation or the ark of salvation. And in this book, we're covering the primary issues concerning fiqh. And so fiqh is related to which part of the deen out of Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. When we talk about fiqh. Out of those three categories,
It's
Islam,
on.
Iman,
It's
and
on. It's on. It's on. It deals with the outward actions and conducts.
what fiqh does?
I said it's on.
No.
You said is which one is it? Is it not the? Does it fiqh not deal with ihsan? Is that
No.
not the conduct?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
It deals with Islam.
Yeah, Islam, and Islam deals, the fiqh deals with
Legal
fiqh is-
judgments.
yeah,
Yeah, the
ahkam,
jurisprudence.
yeah, Islamic rulings. So it's going to deal with matters of worship, the ins and outs, do's and don'ts, right? And Ihsan deals with the matters of the heart. Islam deals with matters of the body, and Iman or Aqidah deals with matters of the mind. All right. All
Say
right.
it again.
No. So Iman deals with matters of the mind, and
Okay.
by extension by the heart, because Iman is in the heart. Islam deals with matter of the body, worship, rulings, and Ihsan deals with matters of the heart, or the soul, or the spirit. All right, so we had an assignment from last week. Well, first of all, how's everybody? Health, wealth, knowledge, yourself.
All good, alhamdulillah.
Okay, it's good to see you all on today, inshallah. All right, and so we want to cover from what we did last week. We went over the 5 pillars and the 6 articles of faith. I'm sure everyone here knows those, inshallah. And we had a homework assignment or a couple assignments. Sister Candace came in and tried to take the credit for, but we talked about one of the companions.
You just don't stop. But all
No,
right.
I did not stop. Relentless.
Alhamdulillah.
So we mentioned the companion. Well, she mentioned the one that performed the wudu. But there was a companion. We mentioned that the same companion that the Prophet ﷺ, when he sent to Yemen. The companion that made the
Ibn
wudu.
Jabal, Mu'adh ibn Jabal.
And one of his virtues. What was one of his virtues?
He was the most knowledgeable in regards to halal and haram.
Yes, that was one of his virtues. That's what I was looking for. Alhamdulillah. Okay, what was the other homework assignment?
That was the only one. We answered the other one.
Okay, so Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when we talked about the hadith, he was the one that the Prophet ﷺ, he sent to Yemen, and he told him, he said, "You are going to a people of the book. Let them be the first. Let the first thing you call them to is to testify there's la ilaha illallah, and then after that, if they accept that, the 5 prayers, the zakat, so forth and so on." And so this is the foundation when we're talking about fiqh, the rulings of the 5 pillars, inshallah ta'ala. And we mentioned, not last week, but the first week we had in the class, in this book is primarily talking about rulings in the Shafi'i school relating to worship. But there was a part that we covered about Iman in brief, inshallah. All right, so any questions from last week? No questions? Okay, then. So let's get on with the presentation, inshallah. Let me do
Mr.
this.
Fahima, I don't know if you know, but your camera's on, just to let you know. Yep.
Okay. So this week we're going to start with the The ahkam as-shar'iyyah. The ahkam as-shar'iyyah. See, is the screen coming up? Let's do that. So the ahkam as-shar'iyyah is the rulings of the sacred law. And so in the book, here we have this part. We're on that section. I don't know what page is that on.
It's 7 in the book. If you have the actual book, it's page 7.
Yeah, page 7.
I don't know
Oh,
I don't know which
yeah,
one's on
it's
the
page
PDF.
21. All right. So this week we're just going to cover this section because then we actually haven't gotten to the actual book just yet. And so this part, there was added in later just to give an understanding. So we're going to cover this today. So in the Shafi'i madhab or school of thought, the actions of those who are obligated to observe the precepts of religion take one of the five rulings. So in other words, all of the stuff that we need to know as far as worship and what categories they fall under, they're going to fall under 5 categories. 5 categories, and we're going to cover those 5 categories today, which are the ahkam as-shar'iyyah, the rulings of the sacred law. So whatever action of worship that we're performing in Islam, it has to follow under one of these, you know. And so this is going to be important with some of the discussions that we come across, because sometimes, you know, Muslims, we, you know, sometimes speaking without knowledge or without proper knowledge, we say things that are incorrect, you know. And for instance, some of you may have experienced, may have been doing something, engaged in something, and someone says, "Oh, that's haram." You ever heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
And it may not have been haram because they don't. So it's important to know the meanings of these words, inshallah. So that's what we're going to cover today. All right, so the first one is wajib, which means obligatory or mandatory. And so the meaning of wajib with respect to worship, that one will be rewarded for performing the action, and they will be liable for punishment if they abandon the action. All right. And so let's go here. Okay. Go to the next slide. What's going on here? So an example would be the 5 pillars and believing in Allah properly. Believing in Allah properly. All right, so the 5 pillars, these are all obligations that one who reaches the age of responsibility, which is called mukallaf, they are obligated to know these things and they are obligated to perform them. And they get rewarded for performing these actions as an obligation, and they are liable to punishment if they don't perform them. And this is also important, that they are liable to punishment. You know, it could be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive a person for neglecting their obligations, but it's not a chance that we want to take. This is the area where you don't be like, oh, you know, Allah is going to be merciful to me. You don't know. So, you know, don't play around with it. And we mentioned believing in Allah properly because all of us, we believe in Allah as Muslims, but then there has been distortions about what to believe about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it is an obligation. It is wajib for one to know what is permissible for Allah, what is impossible, what is not permissible, what is mandatory to believe about Allah, what is impossible for him and what is possible for him, and these things that we have laid out in the previous class. But I told you all we're going to cover this in detail in another class. I'm just trying to formulate the time, you know. I don't know if you all will be interested in doing, you know, going like 2 hours on Sunday.
The question is, can you give us that time to give us that information? And if whoever's available, then they should be online, inshallah.
Yeah, that's the question.
The time, because after we get out of this class, I have a Tajweed class. It
Okay.
starts at 8:30 my time. So I mean,
Well,
I'm
we'll discuss it. You know, it's something that we'll put together, inshallah.
Can you spell wajib for me?
WAJIB. IB.
Oh, wajib. Okay.
Wajib. Okay. All right. And also in the Shafi'i school, the other term that's used is fard. And so in the school, fard and wajib are interchangeable. They basically mean the same thing. So something that is fard, is the same thing as wajib. All right. Okay. Does somebody have a question?
Yeah, Assalamualaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I don't know if this is off topic, but when it comes to the topic of niqab and like women wearing it, what is the ruling on that, like in the Shafi'i method? Because I know, is it different, like depending on which method you follow?
Yes, it is different. I think in the Shafi'i school that it's I have to look that up. I don't know, but I remember it saying that is wajib if it becomes a fitna for the woman, like if she's drawing attention to herself. And I think I can't remember, so I don't want to answer it.
Okay, thank you.
Right. If anybody else knows, feel free. Okay, if not, then I'll keep going. All right, any questions on that? So in the Shafi school, when you see fard and wajib, they are the same thing. And I think in somebody said I got homework. Ha ha ha. All right, I do. You're right. You're right. I got homework. So I think in other schools, if I'm not mistaken, that fard and wajib have like a little distinction. Like wajib is a little less than fard. Allah knows best. I'm not sure. Okay. So this is an example of something that's wajib, the 5 pillars and believing in Allah properly. Okay, the next thing is something that's called recommended. And in the Shafi school, the term is called mandub. Mandub. And mandub means that one does an action, they will be rewarded for performing the action, but will not be liable for punishment if they abandon the action. So that's the meaning of mandub. A reward for performing the action and not liable for punishment upon abandoning the action. Okay, and examples is like if you use the siwak before salat. This is something that is mandub. You know, someone should, you know, it is recommended to use it before each salat, but if one doesn't use it, you know, that there's no punishment for not using it. The 2 rakats when you enter the masjid, it is recommended to do that. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said before, when someone enters the masjid, they should offer 2 rakats before they sit down, right? And so this is something that is recommended, and it's not obligatory. I remember, you know, being with some people, and they almost made it seem like it was, you know, like wajib, like you had to do it, you know. Somebody had a question?
The nafil prayers are also examples of the mandub, right?
The nafil prayers, yes, some of them are mandub, yes. Layla, you had a question?
No, that was from before.
Okay. Okay, another example is fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. So this is something that if you do it, it's definite reward. And if you don't do it, then there's no punishment. And so here, mandub means like there's a definite reward with it, you know. Right. And other terms that is used as a substitute for mandub is sunnah, and not sunnah as in sunnah, we following the Prophet ﷺ, but just in general, the word sunnah means like a practice, something that you do. And that you also see the term mustahab, and you also see the term fadila. Mustahab means recommended as well, and fadila means something that is virtuous or meritorious. So these are all interchangeable terms with the term mandub in the Shafi'i school.
Can I say something?
It depends. I don't know. No, but go ahead.
I can't see your face, so it's like, I was just thinking about one of the rewards, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know like when it just comes to like surface level understanding of fasting, like for me the reward would be just like allowing my body to do what it does, and then when we do fast, the healing that comes along with that and our nutrition alone, and opening up our mind to be able to receive these types of classes like that. So fasting has a lot of reward within itself, just alone with nutrition and memory function. So yeah, that's all I wanted
Absolutely.
to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's just some of the fruits of fasting. But we're talking about as this being recommended on Mondays and Thursdays because and fasting, which in Ramadan is wajib on the person who meets the requirements, and not on every single person because there are people who are exempt. Yes, but all of those things you said are the virtues of fasting itself. Okay, any other questions?
No, not for me anyway.
All right, can I go to the next slide, or you all need to write
I
that
don't,
down?
okay, I thought you was being funny.
All right, can I go to the next one? Or
Yes, ma'am.
okay, all right. Okay, the next category is permissible, which is mubah. And permissible is also means something that is neutral or allowed. Another translation you can use is neutral or allowed. The mubah action is one that will not be rewarded for performing them, meaning that there won't be there's not a specific reward, uh, connected to it, and nor will one be liable for punishment upon abandoning it. Right. So this is the meaning of mubah. And this is in the book, right? So I'll go to the next slide. And so examples are basically like something eating breakfast. All right, so eating breakfast is nothing that prevents you, that says you can't eat breakfast, and there's no punishment for eating breakfast, all right? But there's nothing where, you don't find anything specifically mentioned about eating breakfast in the Sunnah, right? So this is something that's like neutral. Another example is like taking a nap. Although there is a narration about taking a nap after Salat al-Dhuhr, but if you don't take it at that time, there's no problem with taking a nap, and there's no reward or punishment connected to it. Another example is like reading a book. If you're just reading a book just to, enhance your mind and stuff like that, there's no specific reward or punishment connected to it. Right? And so many things, I just use these few examples. There's many, but one thing we should remember in this category, that the bulk of human actions, they fall under this category, that most of the things are mubah, are allowed. Most of the things, with respect to worship or things that we engage in, the most of them are allowed, and the things that are unlawful or forbidden are very few, very few. And this is a concept that we should remember, is that the normative rule for all things is that they are permissible until a sign of proof of impermissibility appears. And so that is something very important. Somebody had a question?
Yeah, I had a question when you were speaking about the eating breakfast. You said something about the sunnah, but during Ramadan, it's mentioned that you should do the suhoor before. Like so can you elaborate a little bit
Yeah,
on that
well,
statement?
we're talking about in general. Okay, so eating suhoor is something that's recommended, but you don't have to eat suhoor. But it's a reward connected to it because the Prophet ﷺ specifically mentioned it for Ramadan. But we're talking about eating breakfast in general. That there's no like anything connected to it that we find like where the Prophet ﷺ like ate breakfast and stuff like that. But because he didn't do it, doesn't mean that we can't do it. So there's no specific reward or punishment connected to it. So this makes it just neutral. All right, and
Okay.
we're going to have another discussion about how some of these are correlated. So yeah, during Ramadan, yes, it is recommended to eat suhoor before you fast because you are is to supplement the obligation that you're doing to make it easier. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned a specific reward for suhoor, right? So that's the difference. This is we talk about in general, what in
Okay,
this
thank you.
category. All right, is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And so this is I was saying that probably many times, you know, there are certain elements out there who will make you think that and I found this for some people who don't know these rulings, they kind of tend to take this view bombarding people with things that are haram or things that they should do or shouldn't do, right? And have any of you had that experience when you first like enter into Islam or someone is telling you about all the rules and regulations?
Yep.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah. And so, you know, a lot of times, and there is actually the group, you know, you have some of these people from the Wahhabis, they will specifically tell you that, and I think some of their scholars say this, that that things are prohibited until you find a proof to do it, which is really the opposite. It's really the opposite, and when you learn the fiqh from Ahl Sunnah. So they're saying that in order for you to do something, you need a proof to do it, right? But the opposite, which is the what the fuqaha have said, is that it's not as long as there's a proof that doesn't exist that you can't do it, it's a go, right? And so that's very important to know because you know sometimes you come across these people and they make everything in their mom haram, you know, and that's not really the case. You know, and sometimes when you know these rulings, not to engage with people who don't know, just kind of ask them, do they know the 5 rulings? You know, because it's not just either it's halal or it's haram. There are 5 rulings connected in between that all of the acts of worship and everything that we engage in is going to fall on one of these 5 rules, and we should know them. Right. So this is important to remember. The normative rule for all things is that they are permissible until a sign or proof of impermissibly appears. And in Arabic it says al-aslu ashya ibaha, that the foundation of things is that they are permissible. All right, any questions on that? And so when we learn these
Yeah,
things,
I had a quick question.
go ahead.
What's the difference between something that is mubah and something that's halal? Like, are those interchangeable too, or are those two different things?
I'm not sure. Well, halal things are basically fall under anything that's is permissible, right? Yeah, that's about the same. I don't know if it's like technically like I'm not sure, so I have to find out.
Okay.
All right. Okay, any can I go to the next slide?
Yes.
All right. Okay, the next one is makruh, or offensive, or something that is disliked. They use offensive, but the translation you see is disliked. Or what's the other translation? Something that is I can't think, but disliked. And so here makruh is one will be rewarded for leaving that action, and they will not be liable for punishment if they perform it. All right. That's the meaning of makruh. It's not just offensive or something that's disliked, but the extended meaning is that if a person abandons that thing that, you know, if they're not sure it's halal, haram, right, they should leave it, either, you know, having doubt about it, and they will not be punished if they do it. They will not be punished if they do it. And so an example, oh yeah, I have my animations mixed up. Okay, so an example of that is delaying the prayers for no reason. Delaying the prayers for no reason. So if someone delays their prayer and they don't have a reason, and the reason could be like, uh, you might be working or something, or you might be engaged in something where you can't really break away. But if you have no reason, like if you just waiting to do your prayer because you don't want to miss, season 3 of the binge watching, right? Then that's something that is makruh, right? Another example is wasting water while making wudu. This is one of my favorites because when I'm in the masjid, I try to show people hoping that they catch it. So I'll turn the water on and then turn it off every time I'm using it, and then looking at the next person got the water flowing like a waterfall, and I'm trying to see if they get the hint. Right? Like you could turn the valve off, you could turn it back on, turn it off. They just got the water flowing there, This is actually makruh, And I ain't gonna call no names, but I'm pretty sure some of y'all do it too. Don't y'all? Don't tell yourself. Don't tell yourself. But yeah, so this is something that grinds my gears, when I see it. But it's something that's makruh. We should try to avoid wasting water and use as less water as possible. And I have here eating onions and garlic, and I put a question mark there. Why is the question mark there, you think?
Because I think it depends on the situation, right?
I don't know.
Um,
That's what I'm
because
asking.
I know they were saying, like, I remember reading, I think there was the hadith about like the onions and garlic not to go into the masjid, or at least to brush your teeth afterwards, because of the something about, like, the prophet didn't want to, be offended someone, but the smell. I think I remember reading about that. Is that not
Yeah.
right?
No, that's correct. So eating onions and garlic are something that are permissible, and because they're halal, they're definitely good for your health. But being around people with offensive, offensive breath, that's the thing that is makruh, and that's related to the hadith that you mentioned. The Prophet Islam said about, you shouldn't enter to the masjid like after eating these. And so nowadays we will have some breath fresheners or something like that. So eating them are not makruh, but going around people and having offensive breath, something that's what's makruh. And we might have to, I don't no, let me not say it. I would say you be around people, that might be your code word. Sometimes you get around people and they're like, yo, you makruh right now, bro. How people talk in your face. Yo, you makruh right now, man, or sister. That might be a code. They might not know what you talk about. Then you can take an opportunity to explain to them what makruh is.
You know what I noticed? On subject, but kind of off. But at the masjid, a lot of Middle Eastern people, I can smell the onions and garlic. Like when you eat the Middle Eastern food, I love the food, but they cook with a lot of onions and garlic. If you
Mhm.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe they need to make a quick fiqh lesson. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, so eating onions and garlic are not cool, but going around people with an offensive smell. Then we go to the next one. And now we have the lawful. The last one is unlawful or the haram or forbidden. And so here, the action that one will be rewarded for abandoning the haram, and they will be liable for punishment upon performing them. Right? They will be liable for punishment upon performing them. Okay, and a couple of examples is stealing, gambling, intoxicants, and zina. These are all things that is explicitly haram, right? That if a person leaves them, they get a reward, right? They get a reward for abandoning them, and they get a punishment, or they are under Allah's promise or threat of punishment if they continue to do them. All right. And that one's kind of easy because, around certain people, everything is haram. Haram, haram, haram. But actually between, haram and wajib, there are, a few things. Right? Okay. Now I wanted to have another discussion that's kind of related. It is related to this, but there is what's called a correlation between categories. There's a correlation between categories. All right. All right. So for instance, there's a correlation between wajib and haram. All right. And meaning that something that is an obligation for you to do, like the Fajr prayer, then it is haram to not do it. Right? So there's a correlation between some categories that if you have an obligation to do it, then it becomes haram to not do it. That's just an example. You have a correlation between something that is mandhub and mubah. Mandhub and mubah, right? So for instance, we mentioned that eating breakfast, right? There is mubah. It's just something that's neutral. There's no specific reward connected to it or punishment. And so a person is not rewarded or punishment doing it, eating, but it's not wrong to do it. But if you eat breakfast with the intention that you say Bismillah, and you make the intention that you ask Allah to make this breakfast something that will give you strength to increasing your worship and increasing your good deeds, then it becomes something that is mandub. Then it's recommended to do that. And it's recommended to do that. Okay, an example of makruh and haram is delaying the prayer, like we said, or wasting water, doing wudu and doing these things repeatedly. So if you delay the prayer, it is something that is makruh. But repeatedly delaying the prayer without any excuse will will become haram. And the same thing with wasting water doing wudu. Doing it, and it happens every once in a while. Okay, that's something that's makruh, but continuously do it is something that can become haram, and which means you could subject yourself to punishment, in that sense. All right, any questions on that?
Yeah, we're wasting water doing wudu. So would that mean that it's better to wash the required parts once during wudu?
No,
Or
no, you can wash them 3 times, but just like wasting water is like having the water running the whole time that you're performing wudu. In our sense, I mean, because during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't have running water like that where they could just, and so they used to use their the water pouches and stuff like that, But wasting it is mean like, what school you follow, in Shafi'i, you should wipe each part 3 times. But turn the valve off while you're doing it. Don't just let the water run freely.
okay.
Okay, you had a question, Sister Miriam?
Assalamu alaikum. So, I've learned that when you do that in the masjid, have the water running like on full tilt, just open, you owe the masjid for that money of wasted water. In addition, if you plug your phone up to charge it, you're supposed to ask permission before you do that. And if you don't, you owe the masjid for that electricity. So that's what I just wanted to add.
I don't know if that's a Shafi'i rule, and that just might be the preference of the community.
Okay.
But I
Well,
mean, you to take that outlook would be good, so it helps you stay, stay pure, like, because you're not. I mean, that's a service that they offer. Like, you if you waste the water, you should kind of like feel bad. You should feel bad, but maybe I don't know if that's a part of your community. That's do they make you feel like that, or you just feel like
no, that's what Imam Amin has taught us.
okay.
But you maybe maybe you can ask him if
Mhm.
if that's correct, if you would. But that
Well,
is what I recall that um from watching, that is what I learned that
well,
when
yeah, in a
yeah.
sense, like, okay, if someone like all these people coming to the masjid, right? And then they're using the water, and then people using it excessively, and the water bill is like excessively high. Yeah, then a person who does that, they should feel like they, owe the to pay the water bill because they're putting a burden on the masjid who has to be responsible for making sure that it's taken care of. Yeah, so they should keep that in mind, and then when, the imam or whoever is responsible for raising the funds, when they say, listen, we need this money because this water bill is like this, then we should have enough conscience to be like, yeah, well, I'm part of the problem because I had this water running on full tilt. So yeah. And also I guess with charging the phones, if it's like excessive, or using the lights all the time, because these things cost money. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't have like electric or just, you know, where you could just use water freely like that. So, but in our times, it's something to just pay attention to. Somebody else had a question?
I have my hand up. I kind of was gonna. It's like a question statement, piggybacking off Sister Miriam. I was thinking when she was saying that, about the hadith that says when you enter into somebody's home or before you enter, you ask permission and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. You ask permission when you're in someone's home. I know, although this is a lot, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's welcoming everyone. Is that like kind of, can you utilize that concept in regards to what you guys are speaking about as well?
Yeah, you can extend it to the masjid where the masjid has the same kind of like more sacredness than the home actually. And so yeah, you should be more conscious in the house of Allah and doing these things. Yeah, so they kind of go together. Yeah, especially when the responsibility falls on even somebody's house. You don't go to somebody's house and waste their stuff or like that. But in the masjid, even more so because it becomes a burden on somebody else. When we understand that wasting water is makruh anyway. When you know these rulings, so it's just best to let me just not let the water run or put some in a bowl or a water bottle or something, and you just use that amount, because there is a minimum amount that the Prophet ﷺ used, and then there's a maximum amount, which we're going to be covering in this book, that you shouldn't use that much over that maximum amount, which is really an excessive amount for what we need, and Allah knows best. Okay.
Can I ask another question?
No,
Okay.
no, sorry, go ahead. I'm just saying. But,
For the makruh, when it says like the disliked and actions, can it also mean like statements, saying things to someone, or would that fall under like slander or backbiting type of thing? Or
well,
could
if
it be
it's
both?
slander or backbiting, those are major sins, so that'd be haram. And so,
Yeah, but could you say something to someone that may be considered offensive or disliked as well? Would that be slander backbiting? Because I mean, I know the difference between those two, but I'm just saying, like, it says something an offensive action. So if I say something to somebody that they may not like, for example, I could tell, or you don't look right in that shirt or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or um that wasn't a very smart thought or something. You know what I'm saying? That could be considered to be offensive. Does that fall under macro as well, like those types of statements or
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
thank you.
Somebody else had a question.
Speaking about the water, what about when you're in the shower?
When you're taking a shower,
Yes. And it's running. The water is continuously running.
yeah, well, you in the shower, you under it, so you're using that water that's coming down.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's not the same thing.
Should it be a minimum though? Like at least, in the shower, you know what I'm saying? Because some people,
Yeah,
like
and
I
you
know some people
shouldn't be
that
in
be
there.
excessive in the shower. Like I know my niece takes a 30-minute shower,
Yeah,
45
that's
minutes.
that's too much. That's too
Okay.
much. That's too much. Because ain't that much cleaning in the world. I hope not.
Oh, that's what my grandma used to say.
Yeah. Listen, when I lived down south when I was a little kid, and my wasn't my biological grandmother, but it was a lady who was our caretaker. She used to put a line in the tub, like maybe 2 or 3 inches from the bottom, and you could not put water past that line.
Oh wow, she
Yes,
wasn't playing.
yes, but she was on some hardcore sooner. Right? You ain't gonna be using up on
For
mom.
real.
She didn't even know it. Right? But yeah, I mean, like anything excessive should be avoided, especially when you talk about resources like water. You know. So, but being in the shower, you're utilizing the water in the time that you're in the shower. But to save water, just don't be in there for extensive amount of time. Allah knows best. Okay. All right, the next slide, and this is what we will end the class today. This is something to consider, especially with regards to fiqh. All right. So here we talked about wajib. And what's the meaning of wajib? That is someone,
Required, and if you, it is required of everyone, and if you don't do it, you can be punished, or you may be punished for it.
Yeah, you're liable to be punished. If you do it, you are rewarded, and if you avoid it, you're subjected to be punished. All right. Mandub is that one is rewarded for doing it, and they are not punished if they don't do it. All right. I mean, remember the examples we had. Mubah, I just put neutral here, so there's one is not necessarily rewarded or punished for doing it. All right. And so that could be any good thing, any good deed. But then there's also everything that is good, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala definitely recognizes it, and mubah is the majority of things that could be good, but might not necessarily have a reward connected to it, but it's still good nevertheless. And there's no punishment at all. Makruh is one is rewarded for leaving it, and one is not punished if they're doing it. And so this is something very important, because you might see somebody's doing something that's makruh, and even though it's better to leave it, but they won't be punished for doing it. And so as you see these examples in our daily goings about it in life, it's important to remember these categories. And then something that's haram, one is rewarded for leaving it, and one is punished for continuing to do it, right? If they persist in it. All right. And so here, this is important. So there are basically 10 possibilities here, right? There are 10 possibilities here out of the mubah. So you remove that, and then you have 8. And out of those 8, there are only 2 that you're subject to punishment. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is also related to understanding who He is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that one of His necessary attributes is that He could, He can leave something, or He can punish you for something, or He can leave it, right? So although Allah might not necessarily punish you, to subject yourself to Allah's punishment is something very, very major. So we don't want to do that, because our whole existence, our whole being is about earning Allah's pleasure and avoiding His wrath, right? And so here, there's only 2 things that you can be punished for. And so this is important to know when we're doing our dealings. There's only a couple of things you could be punished for, and that is, leaving off was an obligation, or continuing something that's prohibited, right? And so that just shows you the vast mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in our actions. So, there is not even there's an indication that Allah is not, He's not likely to punish us for things, but there are some things that we could be punished for, and there are some things that we will be punished for, if we don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. Is there a question? Any a question?
Yes, salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I was wondering if you did this class every Sunday.
Yes, every Sunday, unless the students don't show up, which happens often. No, no. Now, every Sunday at this time, unless I let you know that for some reason I'm not able to make it, for if I have an engagement or traveling or something like that. But yes, usually every Sunday.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Yes, ma'am. So, when it comes to learning your obligatory knowledge that you're supposed to know, where does that fall? Is that mandub or wajib, or is that one of those things that fall in between that? Because, you know, from what I hear, it's required of you to learn your obligatory knowledge so you can follow the rules.
You just answered your own question when you first said it. You said obligatory. Yes. Everyone
So
who
it's
reaches the
wajib.
age, yes, everyone who reaches the age of responsibility, taklif, or becomes mukallaf, they are responsible for knowing all of this stuff that we're discussing. They have to know these ruling, what is wajib, and if they don't know for themselves, they have to ask people who know. So for instance, if you're not sure if it's haram or not, make sure you ask. It's something that is makruh. If you're not sure, you ask. Mubah, you generally don't have to ask because your intellect tells you something is good. You don't need nobody to tell you to take the trash out. You don't need you don't need a ruling about if the trash is overflowing in the house, because I hear this a lot. Change the daggone trash. It is not anybody's job, it's everybody's job. You see the trash overflowing, just change it. You see the toilet paper thing empty, put another roll on there. You see the soap dish empty, put another, all of that is mubah, right? Mandub and wajib, yes, but to answer your question, everyone who becomes of age and becomes responsible when they reach puberty, they are obligated to know these rulings. And so it's important to know these things because many times we hear people, it was just a case I was just reading about, and somebody just said it's haram. So let's give an example. We said all of the things that we engage in, they're going to fall under one of these rulings. So what about something like birthdays?
Would it be, I think, based on the definitions for birthdays, I don't say birthdays, but I call it the soul day, would be mubah, permissible. And I say that with my evidence on the hadith regarding how Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he fasted for his soul day. He did acknowledge it. He made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his day. And then we have the Mawlid, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
and in the Quran, to give more evidence, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the birth of Yahya, the praising, and Isa alayhi salam also praised himself during, you know what I'm saying? And so I think it would fall under that category if I'm not, I don't
No,
know.
yeah, that's good. So there's things to know about these things because people will say, things like these are haram. And so what they're saying, and when you hear these things, it's important to know these rulings. So if somebody tell you something is haram, and then you should ask them, okay, you're telling me that if I leave it alone, I'll be rewarded. But if I continue to do this, if I continue on my birthday to just say, okay, I'm going to give some gifts out acknowledging my birthday, I'm going to be punished. That's what you ask people and then most people, because they don't know these rulings, they'll be stumped to give you an answer. But it's important to know these things. When you see people engage in things, they're going to fall under one of these rulings. And so it's important for us to know before we make a judgment on people. For instance, now, if you celebrate your birthday with things that are impermissible, then it will become haram, right? So, and that's what we mentioned about the correlation between some of these ahkam as-shar'iyyah. You follow what I'm saying?
What about holidays? Because I keep hearing different things.
Okay, well, some holidays are definitely haram because they are connected to a religious. They're connected to a religious belief, right? Like Christmas and stuff like that. Easter, Valentine's Day. They have a religious significance. Thanksgiving. I mean, people try to argue like that is the Pilgrims were Puritans and stuff like that, and it's really not that deep, but so when you have a correlation between these things, okay, if you're dressing up like Pilgrims and Indians on Thanksgiving to try to reenact the first harvest, this is something that would be haram, right? Because you're imitating, these people. But something that's allowed, mubah, is, or even mandub, is to eat food with your family, right? And then you have to take in context the culture that we live in, right? Most of the times, these are the only times that we even get to be with our families, and some of us, it's really literally like the only times where our families gather, And so, only way it would be haram if there's things that are taking place, like drinking and stuff like that, those kind of things.
Question when you
Yeah.
say that. Now we know most of our families, especially most of us on here are melanated. We know how our families who are non-Muslim, they get down. They're gonna be drinking, they're gonna be turning up. They go, how because some of us are reverts, so we know how the family holiday parties tend to go. Now we're not supposed to cut ties with kinship. Where do we? Because this to me sounds like one of the doubtful matters, the gray areas. Because if your family is going to celebrate, now you celebrate the holiday and how they do it, right? You're going on with your intentions of going to this facility was to just be there for your family, not for the holiday, but with the drinking and all that kind of stuff and the whatever. And they don't know. Most families play bid. My family played bid and spades and stuff and dominoes, for the holiday. So what am I supposed to do? Like, should I still
It's
go? Because I
yeah,
know this is going to happen. You
it's
see what
like
I'm saying?
it's like the Diddy parties. When after 2 a.m. you leave.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean you leave. When it starts getting like that, it's time to go, and just let them know. And they get it. Once you did your obligation to engage your family to eat a meal, and once they start tripping, it's time to go.
Okay.
Because you can't be a part of that anyway. I mean, the spades are really not, because my family does that too. But when they start drinking, but alhamdulillah, they do all that stuff later on. I'm already, on Thanksgiving, the itis, hits quick. So that itis jump,
Oh yeah.
I'm out. you know. So, but it's just important to know these rulings and the context. Like you said, we know our people where we live at. So like if somebody could, I don't know how you all, some of you remember, they call overseas and Sheikh, what about this, that, and the Sheikh says haram, right? And now you got people who are not, even spending time with their families when they don't spend no time other than while they got a nice warm meal, you over here eating a cold sandwich or something, And then think about this, on Thanksgiving is on Thursday. It is mandub to fast. So you fast, get an act of worship, then you break your fast with Thanksgiving dinner. You hang with your family, you did an act of worship, you kept family ties, and then you left the stuff that doesn't concern you. All of that is mubah.
And the intentions is not because okay, so this is that's my confusing thing too. They said we shouldn't eat turkey on Thursday because we're imitating the pagans, the kafar. Is that I mean, so like all this stuff is like really just
Who is they?
interesting. you know, them people.
Them
Them
folks.
people you hear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, just disregard them, and all of it goes back to intention. For those, I mean, if it's your preference to not engage in it, that's fine and well. I mean, it's not an obligation to do it. But if you meet with your family on Thanksgiving, there's protocol that we observe and everything. It's going to fall under these 5 rulings. If something people are doing that is haram or makruh, I'm out. It was
Because I
just
was also told that sorry, Shay, I was also told that like even wishing people happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas is like bad, and partaking in the food is like you're accepting the fact that which you're worshiping their God. And I was like, what?
Well, I mean, that's the whole note of context because I mean, we shouldn't congratulate them on those holidays that are specific to religious practices like Christmas, because Christmas at the end of the day, they believe that, that Isa was born on this day, alayhi salam, and they believe that he was Lord and Savior. So that kind of holiday we should stay away from. Thanksgiving is not as bad, but if it is crazy, if it starts to get crazy, leave it alone. But then let's say one like and this is one people argue about, like Mother's Day, right? Is it haram to celebrate Mother's Day?
I don't think so. You're celebrating your mother, which brought you life.
Yeah, you honoring your mother, which is something that's universal. Now, if you take your mom to, to the casino, now it becomes haram. You see? So it's with the intention and knowing these rulings and the categories that something will fall under before you can, say that it's just like this. Our Sister Miriam had a question. This would be if there's no other ones that you want
Yes, ma'am. So, with the Thanksgiving, I try to remember, not become satiated, like full, because, it's said that we're supposed to have like 1/3 food, 1/3 water, 1/3 air. So, that's important to keep in mind when eating during this holiday when everyone is off, because that's what I consider it. You know, everybody is like off from work pretty much.
Yeah, that's what most of us do. Become Muslim. We just get in a hot plate and just check on our folks. And most of our folks ain't really, I mean, now, people might be watching sports, playing cards, and just enjoying each other's company. And then they might start turning up. And we have enough sense to know, because we fear Allah, that we out of there. So the thing is, if you do it, fine and well, but don't condemn others and make it all this other stuff, because, or if you don't do it, don't condemn others to think because they're like some people make you feel like that you going against the sunnah, or you you disobeying, or you're gonna burn in hell, and that's even worse than participate in the holiday itself, and that's just really Thanksgiving. But the other ones are pretty clear. We don't do New Year's Day. I mean, now watching a ball drop on New Year's is one thing, but popping champagne bottles, that's clearly haram. Acknowledging the New Year because we count them by the Gregorian calendar. You got to pay attention to it. Because people act like they don't know. Oh, New Year's, I don't celebrate New Year's. So you don't know when January 1st is going to start. That's our concern. We're not doing all the other stuff and partying. And, may Allah forgive the Muslims who, because they're Muslim, you might see doing those things. Make dua for them and, ask Allah to forgive them. But all these things, but it's important to know the rulings and the meanings connected to them whenever you engage in something. So the more you know, the more you need to know, you can know what's permissible, what's not, what's allowed, and what's not.
So what's wrong with Valentine's Day?
Valentine's Day is based on this Greek thing about love and romance and stuff. What I forget the stuff, but the little, what's the guy, Cupid.
Most of these
they based on
pagan
pagan ritual.
holidays are based on demonic. If you the history of it, because I read about it, it's based on the demonic Roman rituals where they performed,
Oh yeah, with
those types
game
of, yeah. So most of it
uh,
is about that. A lot of it's
Yeah.
demonic rituals.
And I think Valentine's Day was like I forget something like he's supposed to have like this special power to cause love between people. And with regards to belief, only Allah who subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who wills all things. You know what I'm saying? And so there's some like she said, some demonic, satanic stuff around the histories of those things that Christians have allowed to be a part of their tradition, and now they can't even separate it because they forgot about the origins. So if you look at Valentine's Day, and that'll
So
tell
I
you.
know Well, I've
I mean,
known about it, like
for us,
certain things.
for us, it comes down to like, okay, we just buying flowers and expressing our love, and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. Like on Thanksgiving, we just eating. But some of those holidays are very harmful because they are connected to religious beliefs.
Right, because some of them, like even before, because I took my shahada in April of this year, so a lot of them I already kind of knew before I came to Islam, but some of them I was like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but those like Valentine's Day, I think the only ones for us really that really have that are you will fall under Mubayas, maybe like Thanksgiving, Father's Day, Mother's Day, even uh we'll talk about that another time. I was gonna say like Independence Day, but for us that wasn't our independence.
Right, so that was another thing because
Yeah, that's
Juneteenth
what
is ours.
that was white folks' independence from the Britons. They, we were still slaves. So, I mean, if you got, but this also shows some ignorance on our part, because you'll find our people wearing red, white, and blue on July 4th, wearing clovers on St. Patrick's Day, like we all messed up. You'll see a joker that's, blacker than midnight. He got on all green. Like, come on, man. Are you serious? But
It's
yeah,
just like it's been embedded in us to celebrate the days that Master took off because those were
yeah,
days that we didn't have to go out in the fields.
yeah. And then the other part we should pay attention to, and I end with this, if we engage in all these days and then the Eid, we trying to find, ways to get out of work or we can't get out of work, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because I've seen it happen with Muslims. They won't take off from work. They don't have no vacation days for Eid. But when these other holidays show up, they got all the money and all the ability to do it.
Can I say
A
something?
question.
Yeah, go ahead. You had a question, Sister Safiya?
I was gonna say something. I think also it is important for us to know as Muslims where all of these holidays originated from and came from,
Absolutely.
and that a lot of the times we have to understand that if it didn't come from us, the Muslims, that we have to be careful about what we engage in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, that might be an assignment for those who are not aware. Just look into and some of these things have some really dark kind of beliefs. You'd be like, man, and America is based on like Greco-Roman culture. All of this stuff about that's prevalent in this culture comes from that. All of this pedophilia, all of that stuff comes from a dark belief that existed in those times. And may Allah protect us from that, And so the more we tap into the deen, the more we understand that stuff is really not for us, And we ask Allah for safety. So if there are no other questions, we're in there.
Yeah, my hand's been up for the last 20 minutes.
Oh, subhanAllah. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You spoke on cutting ties with kin. So I've cut ties with my biological sisters. Over the years, I've tried to, rectify some of the things that they say I've done, and they ain't say they did nothing, but I'm the one that's the bad seed in the family. So I tried to rectify with them and being humble and, work with them, but they keep bringing it up. So this year, I made a promise to cut ties with them. When I have family gatherings, I'm not inviting them anymore. When I have memorials for my son, I'm not inviting them anymore. Is that haram? Because I don't feel nothing. I tried to, but it seems like they rather be around me and beef and eat up all my food and then go. And then instead of trying to be a family, they don't want to be my sisters. So I cut ties with them. Bye.
I wouldn't be the one to say it's haram. I mean, you keep trying until trying is not it's not an option no more. I mean, sometimes you just leave the invite open so on your side that you say for the law, but we don't get to choose our family, and unfortunately sometimes we have fallen outs with our family that can't be repaired. But as Muslims, we just try to keep it open as much as we can, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So we'll stop there, inshallah. Like I said, I want to try to keep the class, you know, under an hour or definitely under an hour and a half. So we're a little over the hour mark. So we ask Allah who subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for any shortcomings and to accept our repentance. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from us and make it beneficial for us that we can use. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put this on our scale of good deeds. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu wa la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum
Wa
salam wa
alaikum salam.
Barakatuh.